We are 10 minutes from the borders with Gaza. We have a truck full of food for the people starving in Gaza. The police and the army won't let us get in. So we are staying here. We will keep holding on until they will let us in, because there is no reason to let people starve to death in Gaza. This does not benefit any of us. Not the people living in Gaza and not the people living in Israel. And we demand a ceasefire agreement that will bring back the hostages and stop the killing of innocent people in Gaza.
A strong message and powerfully delivered there by an activist named Rula Daoud, who's a Palestinian woman, also a citizen of Israel, who, along with a number of other Israeli activists, put together a convoy of dozens of vehicles, including a 7-ton truck that they packed with aid in the form of food and medicine, and then they brought it near the border with Gaza. They wanted to get it in because, as she says, there's no reason for people to starve, but many people are in the process of starving right now through no small part from the fact that aid that has been made available just can't get in there. It's being stopped at the border, it's being disrupted. So they tried to fix that situation, and of course they were stopped. Now, they knew in advance that they were extremely unlikely to be able to bring the aid in, but they wanted to do this as sort of a symbolic act to bring to light the fact that there are people, including activists in Israel, that do not want this suffering to continue. They said they wanted to highlight a different voice and show there are people in our society who feel what is happening in Gaza is unacceptable. And so you could see there, I mean, look, she mentioned getting the hostages back. They don't want anyone on either side of this conflict to die, either through violence or through the absolute degradation of the infrastructure in Gaza in terms of access to water, to food, to medical supplies, that is going to result in an incredible amount of suffering and potentially in the long term, even more deaths than have been accrued through the actual direct violence of the assault on Gaza by the IDF. Maybe we can get to a little bit more, but Francesca, I wanted to start with you. What are your thoughts about this symbolic act, this attempt to help?
I mean, I think it is incredibly brave, and I think important, especially in Israel, especially at a time, in following such a heinous attack when they lose their jobs if they speak out in support of Palestinian human rights. But I also think it speaks to the incredible ineptitude, not just of the Israeli government, but the United States government. Today we saw more airdrops from US planes with parachutes on, sort of this last ditch attempt to get any food to the people of Gaza. Some of those parachutes failed to open, and those aid packages actually wound up killing 2 Palestinians, I believe, in northeast Gaza. Yes. So this is the state that we are in, and it is a terrible failure, a moral failure, a political failure, between the United States and Israel. The one actor that could just open up the borders to allow the trucks that are there with food rotting day by day. Last thing I'll say is, look, when this entire war, although now genocide, began, I thought, the estimates were like, look, we're looking at 10 to 30,000 dead. And I felt a gut punch. No way, we can't allow that to happen. 30,000 and counting, 25,000 of them women and children by the US's own admission, 25,000 women and children. But then the other thing that was said was the death based on starvation coming out of this will be worse. So imagine 30,000. We're hearing deaths every single day from mostly children because they need the most nutrients, so their lives are the most fragile, who are dying. Yeah. You're gonna be seeing more than 30,000 people starving to death unless we take immediate action, and that starts by opening up these borders.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking and it's crazy because I think that the Palestinians have become so dehumanized in the eyes of some. And of course, you can also say, when I talk to some of my Jewish friends, they go, well, they dehumanized us. War dehumanizes. And we need to get past that and realize that these two people need to coexist there. And it's crazy because when you say, oh, I'm calling for, I support ceasefire. A lot of people go, well, what about bringing back the hostages? You go, well, that's part of the idea. The only time the hostages came back was when there was a ceasefire. Yeah. Yes. So let's get that ceasefire. Let's get those hostages back, and let's come up with a political solution. This is a failure, as Francesca was saying, not just of Israel and the United States, but of the whole world. We've ignored this problem. We've let it continue on, and we thought, oh, it'll just go away. We'll just ignore it. You can't. There's other countries and other peoples that are living side by side and have learned to coexist. I know there's a deep history. I know that there's both sides are saying you did this, the other side says you did that. We are where we are. There's millions of Palestinians, there's millions of Israelis. We need to come up with a solution. And as Francesca said, the first thing that needs to happen is the United States has the power to tell Israel, stop. Just stop, ceasefire. None of this like wishy-washy, like maybe we should, we're kind of calling for a ceasefire, kind of, maybe, can you please? No, stop it. We've given you all the fact that like on the one hand, we're giving them weapons, on the other hand, we're trying to throw in relief. It's just silly. It's like relief, humanitarian relief, so
stop
it's really
sending them
heartbreaking.
Weapons. That's what it is.
Yeah, and the fact is, listen, you got to see your enemy as a human being. These are human beings, and I understand that October 7th was a horrible and atrocious day, but again, unfortunately, there's no weapon that can just kill the masterminds of October 7th and the Hamas leadership, and then not kill all these innocent people. And so, 100%. These people that were doing this are brave, and I hope that we continue to push, but ultimately it falls on the Biden administration to step up and really start saying and doing serious stuff.
Well, the organization is standing together. They have a website if you want to learn more about what they're trying to accomplish. The final thing that I'm gonna say about this is when we talked about dehumanization, I noticed something during the State of the Union yesterday. You might have noticed the Republicans were not quick to clap or to stand up. That's the way that it works. It's sort of a norm of these things. But there were a few instances in which Mike Johnson, who was visible on camera the entire time, did actually stand up and clap. And I noticed one. See, Joe Biden transitioned to talking about the situation in Gaza. And he talked about the tragedy of October 7th and how it was unacceptable that so many had died and that we have to get the hostages back. And Mike Johnson stood up and clapped. And he should. The hostages should be returned. It's unacceptable what happened on October 7th. And then Joe Biden talked about the more than 30,000 that have died since in Gaza and how that needs to stop. He didn't stand.
No.
He didn't clap because he didn't care. He didn't care if 30,000 die. He doesn't care if it's 10,000 children, 3,000 one-year-olds that died. He doesn't care if twice as many die in the end. He doesn't care if 5 times as many starve or die needlessly of diseases that could have been treated if their medical institutions were still standing. He didn't care, and he didn't think he needed to even pretend to care when he was on camera. And I don't know what to say about that. It's just socially acceptable to care about the lives of some people and not about the lives of others. We should be better than that, but thus far we're not.